What is the difference between a 10,000 a month earner and a $100,000 a month earner in terms of how they think? How does someone know how to think or feel if they've never done it before? So, person making $1 million a year, but if you've never done it, how do you even know what that feels like or what
Yeah.
those thoughts are? Everyone, welcome to June's edition of the monthly Fireside Chat. And this is one that I'm super excited about for so many reasons, but the main reason is because we have Elyse Archer here. And for those of you who don't know Elyse, she was my personal brand strategist back in 2019 when I was first starting a business. And we've stayed close friends ever since. She was also our guest speaker at the Untap Your Sales Potential Spring Mastermind. And her session was supposed to go for an hour, but it ended up going for over 2 hours because everyone was so engaged. So I thought it'd be really good to kind of give some of that magic that we had to from Elyse to everyone in the program who was not at the mastermind, as well as for the public, for people who are watching on YouTube. So Elyse, I'm going to just introduce you. But before I do, the format's going to be different for this one. So instead of just doing a Q&A at the end, because of the nature of the content, we are going to allow our members to ask questions during the session. So if Elyse says something that piques your interest or you want to dive deeper, raise your hand. And when she's done talking, we'll call on you for the question. So this will be an interactive kind of workshop style live training. So everyone can go as deep as they need to and dive deep, because a lot of the concepts are going to be new. It's not something we teach. So please ask your questions, be interactive, be on camera if you can, and raise your hands when you do have a question. You just hit the reaction button at the bottom, hit the hand raise, and then we'll know you're waiting. We'll make sure you get to your question. So with that, welcome, Elyse. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be here. I was just sharing with you in the pre-chat. I love your community, and being able to be in person with many of you back in April was so fun. And now to get to meet more people this way is incredible. So I am thrilled. I'm so
me,
happy to be here. Thank you.
me too. So let me give you guys some
Yeah.
background on Elyse for those of you who don't know her. So Elyse Archer is the founder of the Superhuman Selling and She Sells movements, which empower entrepreneurs and sales professionals to revolutionize how they sell, explode their income, and achieve quantum leaps in all areas of life, which we will talk about in a minute. She's an international keynote speaker and host of She Sells Radio, where she shares best practices from female entrepreneurs and sales professionals who have accomplished extraordinary goals. She also was a guest speaker at our mastermind, and she knocked it out of the park, where we talked about quantum leaps, the masculine versus the feminine energy, and the importance of who you are being, even more important than what you are doing. So with that, welcome, Elyse.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. I love that we get to have this conversation too. And one quick thing I'll just say is your group was so open and is so open. And I think it's so powerful that we're able to talk about these concepts, because these really are the things that a lot of people don't know that will quantum leap your sales, and not just your sales, but your life. So thank you for creating a forum where we can dive deep into this.
It's my pleasure. So let's start.
Yeah.
Let's maximize the time. We're gonna have
Love
90
it.
minutes with Elyse. So I want to use every minute possible. I want to pick up where we left off at the mastermind. So you mentioned this idea of quantum leaps, and if you could
Mm,
just share what is a quantum leap for everybody listening?
yeah. A quantum leap is when we do something that most people would say is impossible. We do something out of the ordinary. I shared my own story at your mastermind of having been a sales leader and then an entrepreneur for many years. And for over a decade, no matter how hard I worked, I always made the same amount of money. I don't know if anybody can relate to that, where it's like, you know how much you're going to make every year. You're pretty consistent. But for me, I wanted more. But no matter how hard I worked, I still made the same. No matter how many of the right strategies I tried, I made the same. And I was burnt out, tired, exhausted, depleted, down on myself, all of it. And when I learned what we're going to talk about today and learned how to implement it, I went from having been stuck and struggling at the same level for over a decade to literally within 6 weeks, 10xing and turning my annual income into my monthly income. And it wasn't by working harder. And that's a quantum leap. Most people would say that's not possible. It shouldn't happen like that. But I'm here to tell you, I am not the only one. There are so many members of our community and people outside of our community too, who have done this and implemented this using this work. And so a quantum leap is when you bend time and space and you go to where you've wanted to go a lot faster than you thought would be possible.
Bending time and space.
Yeah.
What does that mean? How do you bend time and space? Like let's talk about quantum physics.
Yes,
Anything you can share as it relates to the science of this or the energetics?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, absolutely. Well, okay, so there's a lot of different ways we could take this, right? And we can look at it from a number of different angles. So there's a spiritual standpoint, which is spiritual law. There's also quantum physics, there's energetics, and then there's neuroscience, which is the subconscious mind. This is science-based. I tend to blend spirituality and science in my teaching, but I want to be very universal in terms of my language and what we talk about today so that everyone feels like it resonates with everyone. So when I say bending time and space, there are two different ways in which we can create results. And one is what some people would call matter on matter. So we live in a physical 3D world. It's matter. Everything here is physical matter, right? And this is how most of us are taught to achieve our goals, which is, okay, I want to make $1 million this year. So let's reverse engineer the process, right? And how many outreaches do I need to make? How many conversations do I need to have? And it's very linear.
It sounds like you're describing my income planner that we just
which is amazing, by the way. So this is actually where we get into some masculine energy. So masculine energy is logical, linear, analytical. It's I do these steps and I'm going to get this result, which is 100% a way that we can achieve our goals. And we need systems, we need organization, we need all of that. And that is how most people achieve goals. So it's like, if I'm going to get to here, if I'm going to buy this house by this day, then I'm going to need to work this many hours to do it. I'm going to need to do this, do that. And it's like, it's a very methodical, logical approach. Totally a great way to do it. I discovered this other way in this process of quantum leaping and 10xing in 6 weeks and doing something that most people would say was impossible, which is what we would call energy on matter. So our results will never supersede our identity. And this is where, as we get into the power of the subconscious mind, and we can talk more about this today, 95 to 98% of our results in sales and in life, of everything that we experience in life, is controlled and determined by our subconscious belief systems, our thoughts about ourselves, our beliefs about ourselves. This is why you can predict if you're leading a team, or maybe you have colleagues that are on your team, every year who's going to be a top performer, who's going to be average, who's going to be bottom of the pack, unless they do something different, like come join Ian's program and learn how to think differently, right? Learn how to see themselves as a higher performer. But according to neuroscience, because our results will never supersede our identity, and because our results are determined by our self-image, if we want a quantum leap and we want to achieve way better results in less time, it all starts with your self-concept. And it all starts with tuning into, for where I want to go, who would I need to be to have those results? So what thoughts would I be thinking? And this is actually what you mentioned, quantum physics before. So we live in an electromagnetic sphere and universe. And this, again, trust, like I came from Ivy League parents. Our household was all analytical, left brain logical. When I first started learning this stuff, I was like, I thought this was so weird. So if anyone's sitting here like, this is really strange, just know I had to bust through a lot of belief barriers with this too. And I finally just got open-minded enough to say, let me try it. Let me be open-minded. And if I find out it's not real or it doesn't work, then there's that. But I have not yet found out that it's not real or it doesn't work. And in fact, there's quite a bit of scientific evidence behind this. So we live in an electromagnetic field. In the field, our thoughts are the electrical charge that sends out into the universe. Our heart, our feeling state, is the magnetic charge that draws events back to us. So when we talk about changing the game and bending time and space and doing things that most people would say are impossible from a logical, linear, matter on matter, I'm going to move my body through time and space and make this many outreaches and do this many things. and I'm going to eventually get there. When we can learn to change our energy and change our self-concept and move from when I was stuck, I saw myself as someone who made 10K a month. And
Mhm.
that was just my self-concept. So I always did. This is something a lot of us don't know. We have a financial set point. It's the amount of money that you're comfortable making. Now, it may not be what you want, but it's just like for all of us with body and with weight, like your body may or may not be where you want, but you tend to have a weight that you're at unless and until you decide to make some changes and change your identity and change your self-concept. So I was programmed that I am someone who makes low six figures, and that's just who I am. And I wanted more. I wanted more for my family. I wanted to make a bigger impact. I wanted to have more abundance and more flow and more possibility. But when I thought about making seven figures, it felt out of reach. I didn't feel worthy. It actually was what it came down to. And this is another thing, our level of income will never exceed our level of self-worth. And this is what holds a lot of people back and we don't realize. So I had to learn how to become a vibrational, energetic match for someone who could make 100K a month and feel comfortable with that and feel normal and natural and start thinking thoughts as someone who makes this. How am I thinking and feeling feelings, right? If we want to bring in 1 million, a couple million, whatever the goal is for this year, what feelings would you be having from that state? Would you be feeling lack, doubt, limitation, insecurity? Probably not, right? You'd be feeling gratitude, abundance, flow, appreciation. So, and I'll wrap on this. If we want to bend time and space, the key is to actually become and embody the person who thinks the thoughts, feels the feelings of someone at your end goal. And then from that place, we're still taking action, but it's different action. And then from a quantum physics standpoint, we actually start to draw opportunities to us that help us get there,
So
that help the outer world match the inner. Yeah,
I'm a
go ahead.
huge believer. You and I
Yeah.
go way back, and I fundamentally believe and teach some of the same concepts, although I think you know a lot more from the scientific side of things and from
Mhm.
the energetic side of things. But I have a couple questions, two-part
Mhm.
question for you. First part is, what is the difference between a 10,000 a month earner and a $100,000 a month earner in terms of how they think? So that's my first
Yeah.
question. My second part is, how does someone know how to think or feel if they've never done it before? So you're saying, well,
Yeah.
you got to think like a person making $1 million a year, but if you've never done it, how do you even know what that feels like or what
Yeah.
those thoughts are? So you can
Yeah.
tackle each of those
Yeah.
questions,
No, I love that. I think I want to answer them in reverse order, if you
please.
don't mind. Yeah.
Whatever, yeah, either one.
So, yeah, no, these are great questions. So here's the thing. We all have the power of the imagination. And that's one of our most powerful creative tools in our tool belt. Most of us have been taught to stop using it. Most of us have been taught it's fantasy, it's date. Like, how many of you, for those of you who are on camera, how many of you would say, I actively use the power of my imagination to create what I want in my life? And I don't usually see many hands
Once
raised
or
unless
twice a
someone,
year, maybe. Beginning of the year, maybe mid-year.
right?
Not daily,
So,
that's for sure.
what do we tend to, if we don't know how to consciously use our brains and use this faculty, this imaging faculty that we've all been gifted with, what do we tend to do with it? We tend to worry. We tend to go to worst case scenario, right? We tend to freak out. Our thoughts run away with us and they tell us all of these stories. Oh, I'm not going to hit quota. I'm going to fail. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Right. So your worrying is just negative visualization. That's all it is. So if we're caught up in worry, stress, anxiety, picturing the worst case scenario, which your brain will actually move to unless you consciously teach it to work for you, you
Mhm.
actually are visualizing. You're going to a place in your mind that hasn't happened yet. It's just not serving you. Because by law, whatever picture, whatever image we hold on the screen of the mind must actually move into form. This is the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. So if you say, how do I go to a place where it hasn't happened yet in my mind? You do it all the time. Many people do it negatively without realizing it. So what we want to do is we want to learn how to harness it and use it to create something positive. So I'll give you an example. So I want you to imagine right now that you're going to go get a lemon out of your kitchen. So you can actually do this with your eyes open. You can do it with your eyes closed, whichever you want. But if you close your eyes and just kind of imagine, okay, I want a lemon for my kitchen. I'm going to walk into my kitchen. So see yourself right now going into your kitchen in your home, and you open up the refrigerator, you pull the lemon out. Now you're going to go get the knife out of the knife drawer, or the knife block. You set the lemon down on the counter. Do you feel the lemon in your hand right now, right? In the knife in your other hand, you're going to cut it. And now I want you to, so you're holding that lemon half in your hand. Now you're going to raise it up to your mouth, and I want you to take a big bite out of it. What did you feel when you just did that? Did your mouth pucker at all? Did you feel and taste the sourness of the lemon? Right?
Still puckered.
It's still pucker. That's a really small example of how powerful your mind is. That's the mind-body connection, that we can think of something like that and literally have a physiological change in our bodies. So you can do this with anything. And and I'm going to talk about the difference between a 10K and a 100K month in a moment, because it's the exact same thing that you do. But this is the power of the subconscious mind, is that it is designed to make whatever you focus on your reality. There's an amazing book, Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, for anyone who wants to go deeper into the research and the science behind. There's tons of books on the research, but this is a good one. But the subconscious is designed to help you go wherever you want. The key is most people don't know how to harness it or use it. So it's kind of like an untamed animal that's dragging you around all the time.
I'm just gonna
Please.
weigh in on something. So the year that I went from to Quantum Leap, I went from my whole career, 16 years, I was doing 200 to 300,000, right?
Yeah.
That's what my comfort zone, that was my set
point.
point for my financial max. One time I got to 350, but it was like, couldn't crack it for 16 years. Then I go to this, we'll call it personal development conference, and they have me visualizing like an hour visualization of a year from now. And all the people in my life are proud of me, and, you know, my family and my friends, and, you know, I've made it. And then they said, well, put a number in front of you. What number came by? And the number 4 million came by. And the most I'd ever sold up to that point was 1.5 million. And so it was like a long, I'm not going to steal your thunder because I want to condense it, but it was a long visualization, and I felt it. I felt the smiles. I felt my boss. I saw my customers. I literally was hypnotized in that moment. And that year I did 5.7 million. It wasn't because I held on to that. It's because I felt something inside of me where I believed I can do it. And then I was like, I don't care what I have to do. I'm going to make that happen. And the energy that I showed up with all year from that place of like, I want what I just felt, was with me subconsciously. And I ended up, again, exceeding that. So I don't know if this is kind of a form of that exercise I went through. Same thing I did with my house, with like Arrowhead. So I've kind of done this, like picturing goals throughout my whole life, but I never really knew what it was except visual. I called it visualization. So is it along the same lines of that's how you feel into that state when you see something? Okay.
And what I love about that example, Ian, is you said you felt it. So how many on here, and I can, for those who I can see, how many on here have ever like made a vision board or done affirmations, and you try it for a while and then you're like, what is this? This isn't working. This is a big waste of time. I used to do that. Okay. Thank you for your honesty. And I would put some,
thank you, John, for being honest. I see John.
I used to do that, and I would get so frustrated. I'd be like, why are all these people talking about, oh, I'm manifesting my dreams and manifesting my vision board? And I'm sitting here looking at a vision board with amazing things on it, but nothing is changing. What you said, Ian, that you emotionalized it, that's it. And this is where, especially, and I want to speak especially to the men here right now, and why this work is so important, because many of you have been taught to be cut off from your emotions, that it's like, it's okay you have most men are taught to have a very limited emotional range. The language of the subconscious is emotion. It's images and it's emotion. So there's a book by Neville Goddard, Feeling is the Secret. Highly recommend it. It's going to be more on the spiritual side versus the scientific side. But when especially men can learn to tap into that emotional range and feel, like you said, how do I feel? Now that I'm at 4 million and you did 5.7, now that, which is so great. Now that I'm at 4 million, how do I feel? And you felt it. That's how we program. There's a filter in our brain, the analytical mind, where we can think about something consciously all day long. Like if you just thought, oh, that would be great to make 4 million, but then you didn't actually know how to move that image from your conscious into your subconscious. And we've got to get it past, it's like a bouncer in your brain. We've got to get it past the bouncer. And we do that by giving it images and strong emotion. We emotionalize it. That's how we move that picture and that belief system into the subconscious. And then from there, it must happen. It's not a matter of if, but when. And so this is a tool and a skill set that we can cultivate. And this is why we'll look at people and we're like, how are you creating such incredible results? And it seems like you're not working as hard as me and this and that. It's
Mhm.
their self-concept and it's the image they've put in their subconscious.
Mhm.
That's it. It's
So
powerful.
the self-concept, again,
Yeah.
I'm a 2 to 3. I was fortunate because I wasn't fortunate. I invested myself to
Yeah.
be part of this group where they did the visualizations, but I put myself in a situation where I had someone facilitating that exercise to go through and feel what it feels like to be someone who makes 4 million or sells $4 million. You know, again, if you don't have necessarily that, if you're not in a group like this or your group, like, how do you know what that feeling is? How do you
Yeah.
know what that person who's performing at an exponentially higher level thinks, feels? What are some
Totally.
things everyday people can do to tap
Yeah.
into that?
Yeah, this is so good. So I would say like critically important to surround yourself with people who are doing it if you want to do it fast. Just being in this community, being in Ian's programs, being in this group, you'll start to absorb from other people and you'll start to notice, oh, they don't think like that. They don't think this goal is hard. They think it's small. And you start to realize, oh my gosh, I've been living in this limited little box and I don't even know it. So it is so true. You are the average of the 5 people you're surrounded with. So get around people who are doing what you want to do and invest in yourself to be around people who are doing what you want to do, because then you'll actually take it seriously. Aside from that, I'd say that, and one other exercise that you can do, and this is something we have our clients do when they come into our community, we call it new personality versus old personality. So we actually want to, we don't want to go quite yet to who you're going to be at the new level. I want to start with a healthy dose of self-awareness for who am I being right now? Because in life, this is why people get vision boards and manifesting messed up. They think we get what we want. You don't get what you want, you get what you are in life. You get what you are. So we need to get aware of who have I been being up until this point. So I have my clients make a spreadsheet, super sexy. It's a spreadsheet. And we have different sections. So we have old personality. And on the old personality side, we write down my thoughts, my feelings, and my actions. Thoughts, feelings, and actions. And we just want to start to get aware. Most of us live in some sort of an emotional, we generally live in some sort of emotional state, emotional range that we're comfortable in. Now, again, it may not be what we want, but it may be for me, it was mild anxiety for many years. Like no matter what I did, I just had this like mild anxiety that stuff was going to go away or I wasn't going to be successful. I was really worried about what other people thought about me. And that was like my emotional range. Well, I had to get aware that that wasn't the only option to live in. And because neuroscience, we can only think to the level of our emotional state. It's really important that if we want to tap into a new frequency and a new level of identity, we learn how to elevate our emotional state and open our hearts to feel the way we would feel if the end result was created, because you actually think far more expansive thoughts from an elevated emotional state. But we want to get aware of who you've been being. So what are the thoughts I'm thinking that I wouldn't be thinking if I was at that next level? I
Mhm.
can't afford that. I don't know if more money's coming in, right? We just want to get aware of that. This client's not going to buy. They're annoyed that I'm reaching out again. Then what are the feelings that I'm feeling on a regular basis? And our bodies actually get addicted to the stress chemicals. It's cortisol. It's addictive. We don't realize this. Our bodies get addicted to feeling bad. We don't even know that that's the case, but they do. What are the feelings that I'm having on a regular basis that I don't think I'd be feeling if I were there? And then finally, what are the actions that I'm taking right now that if I were at that end result, I don't think I'd be taking? It could be procrastinating. It could be holding back on pitching yourself for an opportunity, right? So write those down and get aware of those. I've got a note on my phone where I keep all of this. And then we want to go, so that's old personality. No, there's no judgment, there's no shame. We love this version of ourselves, but we're going to love ourselves into greatness. Okay. We're going to love ourselves into our next level. So, new personality. So, from the end result, who would I need to be to have consistent $100,000 months, $200,000 months? And money's not everything, right? It's just a measuring stick. Let's just play with that right now because it's easy for us to think about. So for whatever your goal is, who would I need to be? And what would someone be thinking at that level? So again, that's the power of this group and being in Ian's energy and everyone else's energies. You can learn how to think. That's how I hire mentors. I want to learn how they think because I know that their thoughts are creating their reality. So what are the thoughts I'd probably be having? Probably be having thoughts of, wow, this is amazing. Thank you so much. Thoughts of like people love when I reach
You
out to
don't
my
want to be in
clients,
my
love to
head.
pay
Believe me,
me.
Elyse. I make a lot of money, but it's
We're
chaos
all
there.
we're I know it's like, and we're all human with this too, right? But we want to get aware of this stuff. So what thoughts would I be thinking from that place? How would I be thinking about myself? How would I be thinking about others? How would I be thinking about money? And I'm going to speak to the energy of money in a second. I'm going to give you something that's really powerful. From a feeling state, what feelings would I be having at this goal achieved? I'd probably be feeling grateful, abundant, expansive, free, generous. One thing that we don't realize, at least I didn't realize for a long time, is if we want more money, we don't just want money for a pile of money sitting around. We want it for the feeling of freedom that we think it's going to create for
Yeah,
us in our lives.
for sure.
And so we can actually tap into that feeling of freedom now
Mhm.
and learn to feel. And actually, the more free you feel, the more money you'll attract because you don't get what you want, you get what you are. And then what actions would I be taking from that place? And then we start playing with being that person. So this is about embodiment. And it's a deeper dive than we may or may not have time for today. But one thing I'll say is tuning into the feelings of going from, let's say, a 10K month to a 100K month. Here's how you got to feel it first. You've got to think it and feel it first before it happens. You have to actually be it. I was it. My quantum leap happened in a short amount of time, but I'd actually been trying for 10 years before that. So I don't want to sometimes people hear that like, it's taken me 2 months. I'm working on this and the money is not there. I'm like, remember, I was trying for 10 years. Okay. And it wasn't happening. When I got this and it clicked, it took 6 weeks. But 3 of those 6 weeks, I was being her before more money came in. I
Mhm.
was actually being her. I finally felt free. I felt abundant. I felt empowered. I felt worthy. I felt like I was spiritually connected in a way I'd never been spiritually connected before. I was her. And then everything came. So if you want to learn how to tap into a level of feeling around abundance and financial abundance that you may not have accessed yet, the way I would think about it is imagine we want to learn to relate to money in a really natural way where it's just natural for us. It just is. So imagine if you had a faucet in your house where you could just turn it on anytime you needed money and whatever money you needed for that thing you wanted came out. And then you just shut it off and then you just turn it on again when you needed more. How would you feel about money? And I'd love for you to actually type in the chat how you would feel about money if you had a faucet of money in your home. I'm gonna look at the chat here.
Guys, let's throw it in here so Elise can see it.
Yeah, it would be on all the time, limitless, relieved. I wouldn't give a shit. There you go. Exactly. Irrelevant. Yes. Free. Yes. That's it.
I wouldn't
No
give a shit
worries.
about money. We're gonna uncensor a C.
Yeah. But that's actually it. And that's the feeling state. So something else that I talk with clients about with money and like how I know they're a match for the amount that they want is I'll ask clients like, how would you feel? So, and you all can do this right now. Whatever your monthly goal is right now for your sales, how would you feel if that happened right now in this moment? And just feel into that. And a lot of people will say, oh my gosh, I'd be over the moon. I'd be excited. I'd be elated. Yeah, Joe, to your point, thrilled. Here's how I know you're not a match for it yet. You're like, it would be amazing. And it would. And we always create what feels natural for us. So this is a really important distinction. And I didn't get this for a long time either. I'd be like, oh my gosh, it'd be amazing to have a 100K month. I'd be thrilled. It would be incredible. I wasn't a match for it because the person who's having it is like, of course, thank you. My energy with what I is thank you so much. Of course,
But
thank you.
you're
It's
bringing
natural.
something up, which is my next question,
Yeah.
and again, I'm in a different world fundamentally. I realize that, but I wasn't in sales, and I'm still the same person. But
Yeah.
we just had a 350K month this month. It was
Amazing.
our biggest month, and everyone's like, "Whoa, my team," and I'm like, I
Mhm.
felt nothing. And then you
Yes.
said this, well, what's your next goal? 500K. I'm like, okay. Like you get to a point where, of
Yeah.
course, it's going to happen because I'm doing the things that
Yeah.
would lead that to happening, right?
Yeah.
I'm making the right connections. I'm spending my time in the right revenue generating activities. I'm putting the right strategic, plan in place. I'm executing.
Mhm.
I don't know if, I mean, I think it's a good thing because then money is not the predominant driver anymore. It shows, well, you have to
Mhm.
think about maybe something else, like think about your wife or my
Mhm.
family in a place where we are completely free. So
Yeah.
it probably transcends money at that point. But I'm glad you mentioned it should happen. You shouldn't feel like, oh my God, because fundamentally, if it feels like that, it's maybe so far away from your reality. Is that what you're getting?
That's exactly, you're not a match for it yet.
Okay.
And to your point of the 350, it's like it feels natural. Like that wasn't surprising to you because you're a
It's
match
just
for it.
not emotion. There's not emotion
Right.
attached to the
Mhm.
money so
Yep.
much. But again, how does this relate to sales? And again, apologize to anyone. I'm not saying, oh, it's nothing. Of course, it's phenomenal, but that's not you could say, oh, well, there's billionaires or there's people worth tens of billions. If you're
Mhm.
working in a certain way, you're going to have the type of money that we're talking about here,
Mhm.
just based on what you're doing, the choices you're making, how you're showing up, and how you're thinking.
Yep.
But I guess my question is from a sales standpoint, the
Mhm.
energetic of somebody who doesn't need the money is so
Yep.
much more impactful and effective in selling than the energetic of somebody who needs the deal or needs the money. Because if you say you need the deal, it's because you need the money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
talk to me about that because
Yeah.
that's what I teach. I say detach from the outcome, act
Yeah.
like you don't need the money because it works and people want to work with you when they know you're not in it for yourself, you're in it for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And it's an energetic to that. So kind of talk to me about how this portrays and why this is important in sales specifically in terms
Oh
of
yeah.
needy and working and feeling like you already have something even before
Yes.
you've gotten it.
Yeah. This is the power of non-attachment. And I understand. I have been places in my life where I was like, I absolutely need this deal. So I completely get it if anyone is there right now,
No,
or
you
we've
do.
probably all been there at some point, right? Here is how, because it's not gonna get you to where you want to go. So the way that I would detach from that first is to realize anything you don't already have, you don't actually need it.
Mm,
You don't actually need it. From a fundamental, just spiritual slash life standpoint, you don't need it because how do I know? You're here, you're breathing, you're alive, you don't have it right now, and you're still here.
mm,
So when we can realize that and understand that and realize I'm okay. And I don't take people to worst case scenario. Like that's not how I coach. But sometimes if I can tell someone's really attached to something, I'll actually take them there because a lot of times our brains will tell us if I don't get this deal, I'm going to be out on the street. I'm going to die. Like we go to these scenarios in our mind that are extremely unlikely. And we'll go there and we'll say, what would actually happen? Like, what's the worst case scenario?
mm,
And they realize, worst case scenario, I'd live off my savings for a bit and I'd get another job. Or worst case scenario, I'd go move in with my parents for a while and that wouldn't be great, but I'd still be alive. Or worst case scenario, I'd go live on a friend's couch and I'd have a great story at the end of it. Right. So like if we let our brain actually realize I don't need, like, I'd be okay. If this didn't happen, I'd be okay. We can relax and we can detach from the feeling of need because the feeling of need says, I don't have it. And there's a gap. And when we're saying, I don't have it, the universe says yes. The universe just says yes to whatever you say about yourself. So if you're like, I don't have this deal, I need it, the universe says, yes, you need it. You don't have it. It's for anything. I need this money. I don't have this money. Universe says, yes, you don't have this money.
mm.
Right. So we want to learn to get into a place and those moments that feel like rock bottom, those moments that feel like pressure, or where we're really being tested and tried. And I've had plenty of them in my career. What I've learned is they're refining seasons to help you figure out who you are. And something that I've become conscious of in my own life, and particularly around money and sales and abundance is not about a certain dollar amount in the bank. It's actually who you are. So there's a wonderful quote: prosperity is what is left when all the money has been spent.
Mm.
So if you can learn to practice, what would I be? Who would I be if I just was abundance? Who would I be if I knew I was prosperity? If I knew that I created the wealth, that I generated it from the inside out, from who I'm being, because this is actually true, then how would I show up? Now, this is maybe getting deeper than we want to get. I don't tell me if you want to go in
I
that
think it's
direction,
not.
but
Again, I've experienced this firsthand from someone who
yeah,
needed the money. Right, I didn't come from money. I had to literally make money to provide and survive,
yeah,
and I needed
same.
it, and I was not as effective because I showed up with commission breath to
Yeah,
actually doing well and taking the focus off myself to onto the customers and
yeah,
not worrying about my outcomes. That's what made a lot of the difference. And I think you can only do that if you are genuinely detached from your own outcomes and in service of other
yes.
people. And that's where true value comes from. That's where money flows from, is how many other people you can help.
Yep. Yep. And the one thing I would say too is, people may say, oh, well, Ian, it's easy for you to say, I don't need the money, or I don't care about the money. I just had a 350K month. You did this first. I did this first. We shifted, like, I can tell you my own experience. I shifted my energy first before more money came in. Before, like, I shifted my energy when I just made an investment in coaching in myself, where I was like, crap, I don't even know I'm going to pay for this,
Maybe share
let
that
alone
story.
make more.
So if you can give people some context around
Mhm.
where you were, how much you spent on coaching, and then what happened
Yeah.
afterwards. How did you to go in 6 weeks to $1 million year? Just
Yeah.
that story would be helpful for how
Yeah,
this actually
absolutely.
happened for you.
Yeah. And this was like not even quite 4 years ago. So this wasn't even that long ago.
Mhm.
And we were in a place in our life. So I'm married. I've got two little boys now, but we just had our one son, and he was like 4 months old. And I've always been the breadwinner in our family. I was an entrepreneur already at that time. And we just had our 4 month old. My husband was working night shift respiratory therapy in a hospital. And I remember he was like gone for Thanksgiving when that first year. And I was just like, man, I don't want this for us anymore. And he also had much bigger dreams of going back to school to become a doctor. And I was reading a book by Bronnie Ware called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And she shared in this book, so Bronnie was a hospice care worker. And so she sat with people on their deathbeds, hearing them talk about their biggest regrets. And she said, there's 5 most common regrets that people have on their deathbed. And the number one regret was, I wish I had had the courage to live a life that was true to me, rather than what I thought everyone else expected of me. And I just remember there was something in that moment where, my first son was 4 months old. I actually thought I was going to coast business wise. I was not planning to try to really level up at this time. I just was like, I've got a baby, I'm going to coast. But one of my good friends and my podcast co-host, Greg, had passed away in his sleep a couple months before that at age 39.
Mm.
And I was, not that much younger than him. And I just remember looking at my life and realizing how much I was hiding in my life, how much I was playing small, how much I was watching what other people were doing, dreams that called to my heart, like speaking on bigger stages or doing things on a philanthropic scale that were larger. Or I wanted to be able to retire my husband so he could go to medical school. I wanted a better lifestyle. I wanted to travel better. I wanted to have nicer things, all of that. But I was hiding. And because I was hiding, I was stuck financially. And I said, if I were to go now, there would be so many dreams that I hadn't pursued. I'd been doing what I call putting my life on layaway, saying someday, when it's convenient, when the money's there, when the time is there. It never happens, y'all. It never happens. So there was something in that moment where I kind of just woke up, And I said, I don't care what it takes. I don't care what I have to do. I am going to commit to experiencing the fullness of who I am in this lifetime. And I don't know if any of you have ever made a declaration, not one of those things that we say half-hearted, where it's like, yeah, I'm going to go work out at the gym tomorrow. Yeah, I'm going to do these calls tomorrow. You're fooling yourself. But has anyone ever made a declaration where you're like, this is changing, and you feel the
Yeah.
hair stand up on the back of your neck, and you feel a change in your body? That was that moment. I had no idea what it was going to mean. But I said, I don't care what it takes. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care what I have to do. I'm going to experience the fullness of who I am. Well, universe listens. And about 2 days later, I was listening to a podcast from a woman who I just very loosely followed, but she specialized in helping moms become millionaires. And I was like, I'm a new mom. My dreams require millions of bucks, so I'm going to listen. And she just happens to mention on the podcast that she has space for a private coaching client. And I'm like, all right, universe, I'll bite. So I get on a discovery call, and I can just feel like, yes, I need to be in this energy to up level dramatically, to learn how she thinks. I was working probably 60-hour weeks at the time, and she was a mom of three running a $3.5 million business, working 2 to 3 hours a day. I was like, I need to tell me, I need the secret. So I'm like, yes, I need to be in this energy. I need to learn. And, and so I'm like, yes. And then she says, okay, so to work with me for 6 months, it's 50 grand. And I'm like, I don't have that. Don't have the money, right? How many of us have heard that or said that? I don't have the money. I made 100 grand the whole year before. I was the breadwinner for our family. I hadn't been sitting around saving all of it either. But something that I have learned, and this is true for you and for all of your clients as well, is that your must will move mountains. So when something is a must for us, we always find a way. This is why in communities that are really impoverished, they still find a way to pay for a funeral, right? People find a way when something is a must. And I knew that I had to do this, not because I was like, oh, I'm going to get some magical coaching that's going to change me. Honestly, it was, I need to get so far out of my comfort zone and face every limiting belief I've ever had about money, about my self-worth, about what's possible. And I knew that by doing this, it was a declaration to myself of my own worthiness, which was something I hadn't believed in for a long time. And I knew that in doing it, I would actually have to come face to face with every limiting belief I had just to even be able to pay for the coaching, let alone make more money. So I found a way. I found a way to scrape together a deposit on a credit card. Was petrified. Like, what the heck am I doing? Right. Making this deposit. And then from there, it wasn't just butterflies and rainbows. It was 3 weeks of pure hell. Facing again every limiting belief I'd ever had about what was possible for me, who I was, about how money works. But because it was such a pressure cooker, because I'm like, okay, I just put down this deposit, this 20K deposit. Now I've got another 10K coming up in 4 weeks. That's what I'm used to earning in a month. What am I going to do to even pay for that? I had to go deep, and I had no choice but to go deep into everything we're talking about today on this call. Energetics of money, limiting beliefs, my self-concept. I started studying this at a really deep, really intense level. And like I said earlier, after those first 3 weeks of like, oh my gosh, what have I done? I've ruined our family and put us in financial jeopardy. I started feeling an intense peace because I had a different level of understanding about life and how things work than I had had before that, because I've been studying this so deeply. I started feeling better. I started thinking more expansive thoughts. I started relating to myself differently. I started relating differently to money, to clients. From that place of elevated consciousness, I took different actions. I launched a new group program, even though I had limiting beliefs about whether a whole group of women would want to work with me. I put myself out there on social media. I started showing up as her, as the woman who made 100K a month. And from that place and being open to receive, which is also a really important piece of this, from that place, the money came in far greater than it had before.
Hmm.
Does that make sense? And does that kind of paint a picture of,
What did you, I get the being for sure. You
yeah,
had peace,
like, what did you do?
had, yeah, what did you do well, you set up a group, but how'd you sell $1 million in that short of a time? Like what was happening that I
Yeah.
guess enabled, like, was it revenue generating activities you were focusing on there? Or were you just more
Yeah,
confident
but it
you hadn't been?
was, here's what I'll say. And again, my selling is going to be different than probably a lot of yours. Like some of my selling involves videos on social media. It involves a lot of voice notes. So it's kind of different, kind of not. Um,
It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. I
yeah,
took what I did in tech sales and did it for Untap Your Sales Potential. And it was, yeah,
similar.
maybe it
Yeah.
has a different twist of what it is, but it's still doing the hard things to put yourself out there, whether it's picking up the phone, and calling a CEO or a CFO of a Fortune 500
Yeah.
company, which is what I had to do to make $1 million in sales, or putting a video out talking about addiction recovery.
Right.
It's still about putting yourself out there and doing the hard thing that you're afraid to do. So what
It's
did that look
totally
like for
different.
you during that
Yeah.
period after the hell of 3 weeks where you started actually?
Yeah. So during that hell,
There's the
I was,
being and the doing is what I'm trying to
yep,
get at. And they're both
yep.
really important.
They're both important. Absolutely. So what I can say is the being was the majority of it. I 100% will say that because that drives who you're being determines what you're doing.
Mhm.
So from that place of starting to think like someone at that level and feel like someone at that level, I started looking at, well, what actions would someone at that level take? And so I put together a webinar. I was like, no one's going to sign up for it. It was actually paid. I had people pay $85 to attend.
Mm.
That felt uncomfortable. I had limiting beliefs about whether people would pay $85 to attend a webinar, but they did. I voice noted a bunch of people. I sent invitations to the webinar. I said, hey, it's money back guarantee. If you don't feel like you got what you want out of this, no pressure. But when people pay, they are more committed, right? So I just voice noted the heck out of people. I was simultaneously putting myself out there on social. I actually shared my journey as I went, which I was telling people how uncomfortable I was. I was telling people how I was like, I'm quantum leaping. I don't know what's going to happen, y'all, but I just made a huge investment in myself and here we go. And I just was putting myself out there in ways that were extremely uncomfortable to the old version of me.
Mm.
And the day of the webinar, we had, it wasn't a huge, I was like 20 people registered, 2021 people had registered and signed up for it. And I was so nervous. I was like sweating. I was shaky. I would had nightmares the night before. No one's going to show up for this thing. And I didn't feel prepared. But what I can say is I spoke from the heart and I shared from the heart and I offered a new group program that it had been divinely inspired during this time. And 12 out of the 20 signed up.
Wow.
And it was, yeah. Um,
And what
and
did you charge for the program?
oh my gosh, what did we charge for the first round? I think there was one option that was 5K and one that was 10K,
So you
I
did
believe.
a launch that was, at least around 100K just in that one
Yeah, it
webinar.
was like 120.
Yeah.
More people did
Which
the
is what
10.
you had made in a year any other.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
point. So also to be able to even know that you're worthy of charging 5K or 10K, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to.
I think there's a lot of value. Like who are you being defines what you're doing.
Yes.
Because someone who does hard things has to believe in themselves. They also have to be courageous. They also have to
Yeah.
be confident. They also have to be authentic. They also have to be prepared. They also have to be knowledgeable, right? So it's like
Mm.
certain things require, like, I think there's just so much truth to this of the person, what is $1 million earner in sales, entrepreneurship, whatever, same thing. Entrepreneurship is sales. It
Yeah.
fundamentally is, you're
Yeah,
selling your own stuff.
it is.
But what does that person operate? Right. And I remember again, back in I've had coaches for 7 years. And I used to have big struggles with addiction. Right. I still have an addictive personality, but I channel it in positive directions, exercise,
Mhm.
family, work. But fundamentally, I used to like work really hard and then I would just want to escape. And I remember like one day it was after like an intense couple days, I got on my cell phone and I played video games for like 8 hours on a Tuesday or something, middle of the work. And I had a call with my coach in the afternoon, and I'm like, told him about this. And I said, how did the top earners operate? How do the
Yeah.
top performers operate? Say, well, I'll tell you one thing: they're not playing video games straight for 8 hours on their phone. And it was like humbling. But because if you think about what do you do when no one's watching, right? Are
Mm.
you escaping to distractions? Are you fumbling and taking 2 hours to write an email because you're so unsure of yourself? I'll tell you, top earners don't work that way. They get it out because their time is valuable and they just don't
Yeah.
have the time to spend 2 hours writing an email to somebody. It's short. That's the way executive. So I think again, who are you being, right, does determine what you're doing. And that's why you have to start with, how does
Mhm.
this person operate? I want to shift to like, who are you being from a masculine, feminine standpoint? So
Yeah.
you have men that you said, very linear, very get it
Love it.
done. Give me my 12-week year and I will get it done. You see all the checklists, like this is me, right?
Yep.
To a T. I live, breathe, and sleep it. But I know when I'm in that state of get shit
Yes.
done, I'm not tuned into flow or the feminine.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
when I'm with clients or, certain moments, I could feel spirit guiding me versus
Yes.
this, which is like, it's not very, quantum-y. If you want the energetics, it's just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like robotic. That's the best way to explain it.
Yes. Mhm. Yeah.
So talk to me about kind of what is the feminine energy and why is the feminine energy so critical to these quantum leaps
Yeah.
specifically?
Oh my gosh, it's so good. This is so good. And I'll say too, if is anyone sitting here like, what is feminine energy? Why are we talking about this? Like, as a woman, I had those questions. Okay. So I'll say that. And we work with a lot of women in male dominated fields as well, who are like, what is this? We don't talk about this. But again, when I decided to finally get unstuck and I saw other sales professionals and entrepreneurs performing at a much higher level and achieving way more working less, I was like, let me open my mind up to thinking differently and be open. So one of the tools that I learned in this journey is learning how to leverage our masculine and feminine energy. What
Hmm.
is that? We all have both. It has nothing to do with being a man or a woman. Okay. I'm going to give you an example. So masculine energy is, if you look at this coffee cup that I'm no longer drinking out of, but masculine energy is the cup that's holding the coffee that I was drinking earlier today. Does anyone else have like 3 or 4 coffee cups around them at all times during the day? This is me. I have a
Of this
lot.
giant
Yep. So
thing.
that's, there you go. So that's the masculine energy. It's structure, it's support, it's linear, it's logical, structure and support. Feminine, it's the coffee or the drink or the water inside of your cup right now. Feminine is flow state. Feminine is refreshing. Feminine is what actually keeps us alive and driving forward. So, for most of us, we have been taught to operate in almost entirely masculine energy. What is masculine in the business world? It's results oriented, it's outcome focused, it's I, so it's self, it's logical, it's linear, it's the 12-week year planner, right? It's your CRM, it's your calendar, it's the structure, the systems in your business that you use to move things forward. We need that. If I had a cup of coffee, but I didn't have the cup holding the coffee, I would burn myself and it would spill all over, right? I need the cup. I need the structure. However, if I had a cup, but no water or no beverage inside, and I was really thirsty, but I couldn't drink anything, what would happen? I'd be parched. And if I didn't have anything to drink long enough, I'd eventually die. So the feminine is about the journey. It's about enjoying the experience. It's we versus I. It's illogical in a good way. Okay. It's illogical in a good way, meaning that it is not logical to be able to 10x your income in 6 weeks after having been stuck for so long. I was speaking with one of our new clients yesterday. It is not logical that she went from a 2K month and then within 1 month of learning this material had a 32K month. That's not logical, but she did it. And it was by leveraging this feminine energy. I share this with your mastermind in Lake Arrowhead. You will never quantum leap from masculine energy. It's too logical. It's too linear. So feminine is about the vision. It's about tapping into the being. It's, if anyone in here, a golfer or you play sports and you know what it's like to get into flow state, it's flow state. That's what it is. So that phrase can be more accessible a lot of times, especially for men. It's like, we know what it's like to get into flow state where we're like, things are just moving, they're flowing, we're connected, we're not over analyzing, we're not overthinking, we're being it. That's actually
I
feminine
think of it
energy.
like feeling a free throw, you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. You're in it.
you don't even have to
Mhm.
look. It's that fluid motion.
Yeah. And this is the strategies of peak performers is you learn how to tap into that. That's the visualization piece. You see it. So feminine is the vision. And we feel it. We learn how to feel it and take ourselves there in our mind. And then from that place, because the body's always following the mind, you start moving your body in that direction. So we need both. We
Yeah.
do need both. But what we want to do is we want to learn to shift and adjust the energy. Is anyone in here feeling burnt out, tired, overwhelmed, exhausted, depleted, uninspired, like things feel hard?
I think a
Usually I
lot.
see a lot of hands
Yeah.
raising on there. It's
Yeah.
like, maybe not, and totally, yeah. So
Most
that's
people.
actually how you know you have an imbalance and you're too far in masculine right now. You're too far in the doing. We want to learn we want to tap back into feminine. We
Yeah.
can do that by getting out in nature. We can do that by doing something fun. My motto is when it feels heavy, I set it down and I come back. Like I go do something where I get reconnected energetically and emotionally with my vision. And then from that place, I come back and do my work. Some people may say, oh, that sounds lazy. No, I get far more done in far less time, far more productive.
It's lightning.
So
It's lightening the load.
yeah, yeah. It's because the energy in which we're doing a thing determines the outcome of a thing.
Yeah.
So if you're sending emails or doing videos and you're in an energy of like resistance, this is hard, I don't want to do it, you're not getting great results from that. We all know that. But what about
Prospecting. It's like,
those?
yes, I got the sequence created.
Yeah.
Getting shit. Sorry. It's not how it works. Whereas
But
if
what?
you're an energy of like genuinely trying to figure out where you can help the client and do research
Yeah.
and like come up with ways,
Whoa.
and it's like you're not thinking about, oh, I have to do this. It's different.
Right. Yeah. And that is feminine by nature because it's we, right? I'm actually thinking about them. It's we versus I. So these are energies we can learn to play with. And so when I'm working with male clients, it's like, if we can get you to close to like a 50-50, it's really powerful. You can learn to tap into more of that feminine, that flow energy.
Yeah.
You will
Yeah.
quantum leap. You will have sales coming in like you could, and
Yeah.
it'll be so much easier. And you'll be like, holy crap. And then for the female clients I work with, I try to get them to like a 70 feminine, 30 masculine. It's not a perfect science, but it makes a big difference. It makes a big difference. Yeah.
We have a question from Tanya in the chat. I'll read it to you. How do
Yeah.
you let go of
Oh,
resistance? What's the
yeah.
balance of constantly visualizing and connecting to that feeling without bringing on a spirit of neediness?
Oh my gosh. Tanya, I did a series on YouTube a couple of years ago. I think it's still there. It's called How to Release Resistance to What You Want. It should be there and free on YouTube. I think it's a couple weeks. I went live every day, sharing this concept. I think it's still there. I know we give it to our clients now in our program, but I think it's still maybe public on YouTube. How do you let go of resistance? What's the balance of connecting that without bringing a spirit? I don't know. Can you come off mute and share a little more specifics about what you're talking about, if you can?
Yeah, 100%.
Hi.
Thank you for that. Hi.
Yeah.
Just wanting to connect with that feeling, right? You do the exercise like you did with the slicing of the lemon and trying to
Yeah.
taste it. So you're trying to connect to that feeling. So there's times where I try to visualize the success I want and I guess, ease of not
Mhm.
just always being on,
Yeah.
Um, but it's hard because it's like, well, am I being too needy or am I bringing resistance? Because I'm constantly trying to get myself in the state of feeling it because maybe I don't
Okay.
feel it the first time. I
Mhm.
see it, but I'm just not connecting emotionally to it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And even in your language, there's a lot of, and if this is okay, I just mirror people's language back to them because a lot of times we're not even aware. And I used to say stuff like this all the time too. There's a lot of like, I'm trying, I'm working, like I'm trying energy in it. So, and that's
Mhm.
okay because that's how things often start. But what I would say is when we're in that space, I actually don't try to visualize from a place of not feeling good. I don't like, if I'm not feeling good, if I don't feel connected, if I don't feel tapped in, I'm not going to go and be like, let me think about $1 million a month from this place because you're never going to get the thought past your brainstem, right? It's not going to go there and you're actually going to make it worse. It's going to feel harder. It's going to feel worse. So in that place, I set it down. So one of the things that and this is going to sound like it's contradicting with what Ian is saying about doing hard things. It's not. And I'll explain why in a minute. But one of my mottos is let it be easy. I want to let it be easy. So I want to learn how to tap into a state of flow and ease. And then from that place, I'm going to go and I'm going to connect with my vision and I'm going to go and I'm going to do the work. And if I'm working with a client and I can tell they're like really attached to a dollar amount and they're like, I feel like I got to focus on this and manifest it. I'm visualizing it. It's like, we're going to detach from that. And we're not even going to think about money because you're too resistant to it. You're too resistant to it. So let's find other places in your life where you feel like there's flow and ease. Maybe it's as a mom, maybe it's as a partner, maybe it's like when you're working out. Find a place where things feel easy and natural. And let's amplify that feeling. Let's notice other places where you're in that state. And let's also notice, what do you do in your day that gets you into that state? So we're going to focus on reconditioning your body and your nervous system to a greater state of flow and ease. And it's a process. So many of us, most of us, I would say, before we get into this work, have disconnected from our bodies. And that can be through a lot of different things. That can be and I'm going to generalize here, as men being taught it's not safe to feel, it's not okay to cry, blah, blah, blah. We cut off from our emotions, right? Women, a lot of the women in our community, not everyone, but a lot, it's like some sort of trauma. It can be sexual trauma. It can be other trauma. We're taught it's not safe to feel. We're taught to get out of our bodies. We're taught to disconnect. We live in our heads instead of our bodies, and we cut off that connection. You have to reconnect, and it can be a process, and that's okay. That's okay. There's a lot of resources out there that will help you to get back in touch with your body again, with the feeling state, with opening up your heart again. If someone had said this stuff to me 4 or 5 years ago, before I knew this, I'd be like, well, I didn't know my heart was closed. Check in with how your heart feels right now. Does it feel constricted or does it feel open? Right? Most people, we don't think about this. We don't even stop and ask these questions. Most people, at least when they come into our community, when we start working with them, they've shut off, they've closed down. And so there's going to feel like a lot of resistance when they're starting this work.
Mm.
So we want to start by learning to open back up energetically and get back into our bodies, because we can actually use our bodies as an incredible tool for creating and manifesting what we want in life. Look for that series on YouTube, how to release resistance to what you want. If you don't see it, DM me and I'll see if my team can grab it for you. But it's a much deeper dive into this, but hopefully that helps a little
Thank you.
bit. Yeah.
Definitely does.
Yeah. And what to reconcile the let it be easy versus doing hard things. There's a difference between hustle, force, grind, push, just push it out, like make it happen, and doing hard things. Doing things that are hard means I'm pushing the comfort zone of the old version of me. I'm doing things that the old version of me wouldn't do.
Mhm.
But if we're in hustle, push, force, just doing more of the same, like grind,
Yeah.
we're not,
I
yeah, go ahead, Ian.
I want to give some context to all this too. Like
Please.
I am operating in a masculine state, I would say 90% of the time. It's not a
Yeah.
50-50. I shouldn't say that's pretty harsh. Probably 70-75.
Yeah.
Because on my coaching calls, my one-on-one coaching calls, it feel I feel connected to the other
Yeah.
person. And it's
Yeah.
like I'm with them and I feel the emotion and tears flow. And it's just, but there's other coaching calls where I'm coming from this place of like, I got
Sure.
back to back 8 things and I don't feel into that. So I think a
Yeah.
couple things. Number one is space is really important, giving yourself space. You can't 12-week your way into feeling. I can't put do my two-way prayer, do my meditation on here.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where if I know for myself being a masculine dominant energy guy, if I put it in my calendar to do it, it feels like a chore. Okay. So what I've started
Mm.
doing is if I feel myself being a little bit run down or a little bit disconnected with the heart or robotic, however you want to call it,
Yeah.
I'll say like I'll literally say I need some sunshine and I'll like go
Mm.
outside and I'll sit in the sun and I'll just feel the sun rays. Or I'll say, I want to go on a walk with you, honey. And I'll go to my wife and I say, I need to take a walk right now. Because it's almost like you have to recognize and have self-awareness of how you're feeling to
Yeah.
be able to then use that as guidance to lean into something that can restore your equilibrium. I don't know if that makes sense, but I know for me that's really important. It's the distinguishing between feeling in a flow state and feeling connected versus feeling robotic.
Yeah. It's so good. And I love that you're sharing this because you're giving really solid examples that probably especially a lot of the men in this group can relate to. So it's really powerful. And one thing I'll say too is it's not that we're just feeling all day long and we're not taking action. I tend to take a lot more action from that connected state. There's a difference between aligned action versus misaligned action. So when you're like, for any of you, when you're in flow, when you're connected, you're like, yeah, I'm doing this thing. Like I'm reaching out to people. I'm putting out these emails. I'm putting myself out there. It's just, we're not attached to the outcome because we're just so focused on the being. We're enjoying the process. So there's quite a bit of action that still happens. It's just the state you're in when you're taking the
It's
action.
easier to take action because you feel good. And again,
Yeah, that's it.
I biohack my way to this. I genuinely
Mm,
biohack my way to it, to a state of
yeah,
feeling by doing exercising every day,
yeah,
prayer every day, right? Having lunch with my wife and just disconnect. Like there are things I schedule, but even those things, if I'm doing it because I have to do it versus because I'm actually being in those moments, it makes a huge
yeah.
difference, right? But it's
Every
still better than not doing it at all. So I want to like just let you know if you have a routine of exercise and meditation and sunshine and connection, you naturally bring out this flow, feminine
mm,
side based on the type of things you're doing. So I'm curious how well actually let me take a question first because John put this in the
mm,
chat. So let's go to his. I'm an ex-Army Ranger. Thank you for your service, John. And
mm.
have been programmed to respond to linear planning, the Army,
Wow.
right? For all types of contingencies. I've struggled to develop an emotive state. It's a constant effort. I have a process to get to that state. Any pointers to achieve that state easier?
Yeah, this is so good. So one thing, so I'll give a recommendation and then I'll share a little in my own story too. Have you ever tried or done any of Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditations or his work, John?
I think you're on mute, John.
Yeah.
No, I haven't, but
Okay. Check his stuff out. Now everyone has to find what works for them and what resonates with them. I personally resonate really well with his work. And there's science, like it's all very science backed as well. So for the logical linear part of you, I think it will speak to that. But his meditations will help you recondition your body. And there's actually a specific meditation called reconditioning the body to a new mind. What I will say with that is that when we're first starting this journey in this process, or even if we've been doing it for some time, but there hasn't been like that level of intensity of like, no, this is changing. It can feel like we've got to get ourselves there every day and we've got to like push ourselves back there. And what I have found is that in this process, although certainly like I have moments every single day where I'm like, oh yeah, my heart just closed. Oh yeah, I just went back into trigger. Oh yeah, that like every day this happens. My default state, because I've practiced it so much now, my default mode is calm, peace, grateful, connected, surrendered. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be mild anxiety, fear, worry, doubt, insecurity. But in doing this work, and his meditations in particular, like really what worked well for me, I was able to train my body over time that no, this is how we operate and this is my default mode. And so now it takes so much more to push me into that state. Again, there's still stuff pretty much every single
Can
day.
I give you my son Luke, my 3-year-old, for a few days?
Yeah.
See how you
Yes.
handle that state. If
Oh
you've
yeah.
been in that
Well,
kind of state for a while.
yeah, and it's like we have our things, right? For us, like a lot of times lately, it's bedtime. I'm like, "Ooh, I'm noticing some stuff." So, yeah, we all have our growth edge.
There are mirrors
Yeah.
for what you would need to work on, right? Your
Oh,
spouse, your children.
100%.
It's Dr. Joe,
100%.
Joe Dispenza.
Yeah.
So I was gonna ask any other tactics. So meditation would
Yeah.
be one, right? Specifically
Mm,
Dr. Joe Dispenza. If anyone has watches or listens to Ed Milet, he's had Joe Dispenza on several
yeah.
times and really
Okay.
good episodes. The guy is kind of the guru OG for this type of work,
Mm.
quantum physics and the science behind it. Um, but any other tactics, Elyse, for kind of getting into this flow state on like,
Yeah.
would you do so much so that it now became the default for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think everyone has to find what works for them. So I, um, I would watch, so this isn't so much a tactic, but I would watch his series Rewired on Gaia for anyone who hasn't watched that yet. So Gaia is kind of like a Netflix of personal development. You can get, I think, 2 weeks free, but I mean, I pay for it. I think it's great. But he's got a series called Rewired, which is a very deep dive into the science and spirituality of all of this. And it'll explain, like, for those of you who are logical, linear, analytical, it'll explain all of it. It's incredibly powerful. I studied that thing like a crazy person for about a year when I was first getting into this work. So I'm like, holy, this works. Like, this is wild. This stuff really works. Um, so I would do that to understand what you're doing at a deeper level. I think everyone needs to find what works for them. And this is where I think if you're just starting off, like following a structured morning routine is so much better than nothing. It's so much better than nothing. So I used to have a very mechanical check the box type of morning routine where it was like, I'm meditating, I'm praying, I'm journaling, I'm exercising. And it was, it was masculine, but I didn't know it, but it was very mechanical check the box. I wasn't focused at all on how I was feeling. I just knew it made me feel a little bit better to do that than I was before. But then I'd go back to who I was being the rest of the day. And I didn't realize that that was actually hindering my results. But as I've done this work more and elevated in consciousness, I realize it's not so much about the routine as getting yourself into a feeling, knowing what does it for you to get into a feeling state of feeling the way you want to feel when the end result is accomplished. So the meditations are really powerful because you're going to have to force your body to sit there and sit there for a while, like 20 minutes to 2 hours, depending on which one you do. Not to scare everyone off, but you're going to have to force your body to sit there and your body will fight with you and say, I don't have time for this. This is BS, blah, blah, blah. If you can make it past that point, you'll start to reach a point of emotional freedom where you feel so free and so good. You're like, I want to do this forever. I don't care what happens today. I
Sounds
feel
like our cold plunge.
yeah. And so there's all these different ways to do it. So for me, I do the meditations. I also find like music gets me into that state. Sometimes for people, it's dancing. It's like being outside, right? But I would encourage you, go through those meditations, like make yourself do it. Even if, especially if you got resistance to it, make yourself do it. Your body will resist. It'll say, no, I don't have time. No, this is BS. Keep doing it. Keep showing up for yourself. Um, People have cured. I personally, it's a longer story, but like I cured skin cancer with this work. There's amazing health healings as well as you'll manifest a great deal of abundance and your life will be far better. So it's like, why not? Why wouldn't you not want that?
I mean, it really does, and it makes a difference.
Yeah.
I need to
Yeah.
incorporate more into my daily, but
Mm,
I do it with immersions. One of the things like why we have these retreats and immersions is to get in a container of other people and let go. And I think for anyone who attended our immersion, they'd agree they were a different person during that time based on who
Mm,
they were being, because of the environment, because of the nature. That's we curate an experience that brings that out. So I think that's a big part of it is, whether it's camping for you, or maybe it's going to a nice resort, doesn't matter, a nice restaurant. It's just letting go, getting that connection with your true joy. It's that inner joy, that inner lightness. The lightness of being is what we're describing here is the flow state. And when you show up that
yeah.
way to your sales calls and to your coaching calls or to any customer facing activity, it really does make a huge difference in how you're received. So
Mm,
I know it's hard to conceptualize, but it really does impact how people receive you and how they respond to you. Michael has a question. He says, I've been reading psycho-cybernetics and I've been having trouble with the visualizations, exercises outlined in the book. Do you have any recommendations on how or what to visualize to get
mhm.
into the feeling of where you want to be?
Yeah, the feeling what you want to be. Yeah, great question. Um, so I would say write out. So Michael, write out. So we're going to use our logical brain first. We're going to use our conscious mind first and write out a very vivid, detailed description of exactly where you want to be. So my favorite question, and what I say to people when I'm chatting with them about our community, is like, if there were no consequences or limitations, you don't need to know how. There are no consequences or limitations. Forget the how. And you and I are celebrating your most amazing year in 12 months. What are we celebrating? What's happened? And so go there and allow yourself to go there and write out a vivid, detailed description of a day. Like, give me a scene. And this is a concept called creating end scenes. So create an end scene of, if this were done, then what would be happening in my life? So you create a vision. So you can think about, like, okay, who am I celebrating with? What's like, Ian, the example that you shared, right? When you quantum leaped, you had an end scene in your mind that you were going to, of celebration and who's hugging you. And so we can use our conscious mind to write that out first and map that out first. And then from there, what I do is I record it into my phone. And I'm so happy and grateful now that, and then say it with great emotion. So imagine, like, you're telling your best friend, oh my gosh, you'll never believe it. This happened and this happened and this happened. Or maybe you're telling God at the end of your life, right? Like, this happened and this happened and this happened, whatever works for you in terms of the energy behind that. Record it. And then if you listen to that, I would do it twice a day at least. Last thing at night, falling asleep. And then first thing in the morning. Your brain is more easily programmable during those times. Your brain waves are slower. So you actually slip into the state that you would be in if you were under hypnosis right as you're falling asleep. Your brain waves are going, they're decreasing.
Mm.
And then when you first wake up, instead of checking your phone and scrolling Instagram or checking emails or checking texts that came in, do not do that. Please do not do that. Listen to this. You're able to access the subconscious way more easily from those states, those altered states. And so I would do that to start and see what happens. That's a really powerful tool
Yeah.
that you can use.
And,
Go ahead,
and
Ian.
and yeah, so I did that with the 4 million, but then I did it with the house, and
Yeah.
I did it with my wife, because we had wanted to move because she hated where we lived before. This is years ago, and we visualized her in gardening, and it's the same house.
Mm,
It literally had a lower level backyard from the house, and it's the same exact house we're in now. And I don't know how
yeah.
that works, but I saw it before it happened. And then with Lake
Yes.
Arrowhead too, same thing. And it's like, it's where are you? Who are you with? Why are you happy? What's happened? The more
Yeah.
detail you can put around that uh end year,
Yeah.
and why are you so joyful, the better. And I think, I don't know, there's so much to it, just to in listening to that and hearing it. Daniel
Yeah.
Bornyansky does that every day still. And he put an example
Mm,
in the chat Michael, if you're interested to listen to it, he put like an 8-minute visualization describing where he's at and why he's happy. So I love that. I'm going to do it for myself. I just wrote it down in my next 12-week year. My masculine getting it done. All right. Brian,
I love that.
Brian, Brian has a question. Go ahead, my man.
Elyse, nice work.
Thank
You
you.
got me off the edge here. I wanted to follow up with what you just said. The visualization does work.
Yeah.
I've done this in the past with a prior business and was done with another well-known business coach. And myself and my other two partners, we were really stuck on a lot of things. And so he came in and he helped us visualize our business. He called this world where our business was working, called it Red Bluff. And he said, I want you guys to imagine everything in your business is running just the way all three of you imagined it. Sit there and see the city flourishing, your business running just the way you wanted to, you've all envisioned this thing to work. And to be honest with you, it helped unlock several challenges. One I won't share because it was hilarious, but it was a really successful outcome in one of our products. But the process really does work. The hard part is getting in that state. And like you said earlier, being with people in that same mindset, wanting to change. But I've seen it work successfully. And so it is really powerful. But
Yeah.
I just want to kind of reiterate what you just said. It does.
Yeah. I love that.
That helps Michael.
I love that. Yeah. Thank you. It's so powerful. It's so powerful. And I think the more, examples we share and the more others in the community can see others doing this, like, this is when I say, let it be easy. It's if we lead with this, and if we leverage the power of the mind and imagination and visualization, and we connect with that first, and then from that place, we're taking action. It feels easy. It may challenge your comfort zone. It may feel stretchy. It may feel uncomfortable with the action, but it doesn't feel like push, force, grind, more of the same. It's so different. So thank you for that example.
How do
Brian.
you stay there, to Brian's point, when you get triggered? When
Yeah.
what happens to me is like I'm pretty good during the day with like the calls and whatnot, and then I get like, oh, I have to make a video, I have to write this campaign or whatever, and it's like
Sure.
the masculine kicks in. And then what happens at the end of the day is I'm so damn tired, from going intense all day, that I turn into my patience, my fuse gets a little shorter, and I have
Yeah.
2 young kids, and they can, they can be testy. How do you respond when you get triggered to get back into that like flows? Any like kind of like tools to like reset or get the Zen
Yeah.
going during the everyday challenges that get us triggered?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's like, sometimes it's easier to step away than others. Right. But I think to your point of what you said before, when you feel that you're upset or triggered or something, and you said, I step away and I go outside and I ground, or I do so. So as much as you can, as soon as you can, step out of the situation, because you're not going to get a good outcome from just trying to push through that energy. As soon as you can, step out of the situation, get by yourself, and focus on reopening your heart, whatever that looks like for you. So that could be going outside and going for a 5-minute walk in nature. It can be reading something that uplifts you. Like for me, I just know there's books when I read them or when I listen to them, where I'm like, oh yeah, like that's the meaning of life. This thing that I'm triggered about in this moment isn't such a big deal. And I'm like,
No.
okay, I can relax again. Right.
Mhm.
I think a beautiful one, at least that helps me, is it's called Dying to Be Me by Anita Morjani. It's the story of her near-death experience. And everyone, you've got to find what works for you. But when I listen to that or read it, I'm like, why am I even upset about it? Like, this doesn't even matter. You get recalibrated. So find what works for you. But the more we can be conscious to our state throughout the day and notice, when I think that's a win. If just noticing you got knocked out of balance, that's a win. And then the game is just how much shorter can I make that period where I'm in reaction mode and where I'm running a program again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I always say observe it versus be in it. Because sometimes
Mm-hmm.
my kids will be, "Rah, and my wife's yelling, and it's like chaos. And it's like, I'm not
Yeah.
even there. I'm just kind of witnessing, and
Uh-huh.
my wife gets upset. She's like, "Why are you doing anything?" I'm like, "What's there to do? This is the reality. You want me to join in the chaos?" So, but it's like,
Yeah.
that's not always the case. And
Right.
when it's me and I'm trying to get him to bed, it's a different story.
Bedtime will trigger you like nothing else if you got littles. But
Sure.
yeah, no, I'm with you. It's a growth. We all have growth edges. I do too, for sure.
So I think we're coming up on time. I know we have 90 minutes. I think what I'd love to hear is, for people who are listening, that was a fast 90 minutes.
So fast.
How do people, if they're curious, if they want to go deeper, I don't want this to be just, oh, we heard it, great, we know it. No, you don't know it. This is one
Mm,
of those things that you don't know unless you do.
yeah.
And even then you have to keep doing it. So how can people like dive in deeper into some of your content and really start to practice some of this on a daily basis? Do you have any resources or any tools that you can share with our members that would be
Yeah.
helpful for them?
Absolutely. No, thank you so much. So we have a free training that you all are welcome to take, and it's a method we teach called the 4 quadrants of quantum sales growth. It's a much deeper dive than like this was so awesome, and I'm with you. Like 90 minutes flew, so it's a much deeper dive into all of this. And so we've got a special link for you as part of Ian's community. It's elisearcher.com/Ian Koniak. So elisearcher.com/Ian Koniak. I can put it in the chat. And you can go through that training and it'll take you through a really immersive workshop on all of this. So we'd love to offer that to all the members here so that it's completely free, but we'd love to offer that to you for being here.
Awesome. And I know,
Yeah.
again, I know some of our members, I think Kelsey has done a little work with you now. And
Mm,
if people want
yeah.
to go deeper with Elyse, she has programs available too. And,
Mm,
and so
thank you.
I always like to cross pollinate the groups and the knowledge. And I don't believe there's only one way to get stuff done. I know what works for me, but you have a completely different way. So
Mm,
any closing thoughts or anything you want to leave the group with?
oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I would just, a concept I've been playing with lately is what is better than the best I can imagine? So allowing yourself to go there. So when you're visualizing, when you're taking this material later and you're mapping out, all right, what is my end scene? I want you to play with what is better than the best I could imagine, because it truly is limitless in terms of what you can accomplish and achieve and experience in this lifetime. And like I said, that life-changing moment for me was like, I want to experience the fullness of who I am. So who is that with better than the best I can imagine in
Mhm.
my life? So let yourself go there, let yourself tap into that, and you'll start to get a clue as to what's actually possible for you.
So this is this is really going to be my last question, but you just triggered or you just spawned something inside of me.
Yeah.
What if you've achieved your goals, right?
Yeah.
You've hit that $1 million year, or you're in a place where you have the things you want, the things you need, you're not wanting more. Does this
Right.
even apply this type of work, or is that just the Zen state where everyone's trying to get to? What do you do when you don't see it, or maybe you don't even necessarily
Yeah.
have an idea of what's next because you've arrived
Totally.
at least to where you wanted to go?
Yeah. I love that question. I think our life is about an expansion of consciousness. And so often when we're moving from a level of something that may feel like we're trying to make it, right? Or we're trying to achieve the certain dollar amount or business success, like that's you're raising levels of consciousness.
Mhm.
Then you get to a point where you're like, I'm there. What's next? Right. I think the more we raise our level of consciousness, the more we realize it's about the collective, it's about the whole. And the focus shifts from how do I achieve this goal or have this car or do this thing or get on this leaderboard to how can I make life as good as possible for as many other people as possible? And that really becomes the mission and the driving force of your life. And
Love
if
it.
you do want to quantum leap and if you do want to skip levels, make that your question now. Make that your focus now. And you'll notice when you ask, Wayne Dyer would talk about this, when you ask, how can I give? The universe says back to you, how can I give?
Mhm.
So when we can get there now and we can focus on the collective and the whole and how your life can be of service now, even if you haven't achieved all the things, you will notice that you tap into a whole nother level of abundance and flow and possibility and connection and joy and peace in your life. And I think from there, it's just about how can I continue to give and serve on a bigger and bigger level.
I think that makes a lot of sense because at that point, even the nature of that question is when you're asking that, you've gotten what you need,
Yeah.
but you're still thinking about yourself by nature. So how can
Yeah.
I give? How can I serve as many people?
That's it.
Becomes not about you anymore. So
Yeah.
I love that. And that's something you can sit with for a while. It's not something that's just going to come. It's something that you have to receive and be open to seeing and listening and receiving. Because if your eyes aren't open, you'll miss the opportunities that
Right.
maybe right in front of you that God's giving you, the universe is giving you, whatever
Yeah.
you believe. So
Yeah.
I want to call out one thing. We're going to say goodbye, but just for anyone who wants to understand what flow state looks like or feels like, observe us talking right now, right? It's a natural conversation. These questions are not scripted. Certainly had a preparation going in, but just listening and hearing what she's saying and reacting naturally and coming, both of us, into the group. That's what this should feel like with your customers, right? It's being completely comfortable in your own skin so you could focus on them and try and learn. And again, when we talk about how do you detach, it's not about you, it's about being interested, not interesting. So just observing the way me and Elyse are talking together and kind of feeding off each other and listening to the group is an example of how you want to interact with your clients, and especially executives, where they can see past the bullshit and past the commission breath and just have a real conversation. So be as real, as interested, as present as possible, and watch good things come, because that's what flow state looks like in a sales interaction. It's the same as the interaction we're having now. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. And we'll see you for next month. Thank you so much, Elyse,
Thank you all.
for joining us. And I
Thank
look
you.
forward to connecting soon. All right. Bye,
Absolutely.
guys.